The transition from the sterile, oil-scented tunnel to the Wolters woods was like slamming into a wall of sensory overload. One moment, I was breathing in concrete dust and Alexander's metallic blood. The next, the air was a thick, wet tapestry of pine needle, damp earth, and the sharp ozone tang of the coming storm. We scrambled through the iron grate, the rusted metal groaning as Alexander's strength nearly ripped it from the masonry. We hit the forest floor, not with a thud, but with a predatory grace that made my skin crawl. I didn't stumble. My bare feet gripped the mossy soil, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need for the 4-inch heels that usually gave me my height. The ground felt like it was rising to meet me. "The lantern," I gasped, my lungs burning with the sudden intake of oxygen. "Alexander." "Okay, did you see her?" Alexander didn't answer immediately. He was standing in a half-crouch, his ruined tuxedo jacket discarded somewhere in the tunnel. His white shirt was plastered to a torso that looked wider, harder, and entirely less human than it had been 3 hours ago. His molten gold eyes were fixed on the tree line, where the woman in white had been standing. "There's no one there, Sasha," he rasped. His voice was a low-frequency rumble that seemed to vibrate in my own chest. "But the scent? It's old, like a room that hasn't been opened in 100 years. "She was right there," I insisted, pointing toward the ancient oaks. "She looked like my great-grandmother. She looked like she was waiting for us." A howl, not a whistle, but a true, bone-chilling howl, erupted from the tunnel behind us. The hounds were through the lift doors, and they were in the passage. "Logic later," Alexander said, grabbing my hand. His skin was so hot it felt like he was running a fever of 105. "Woods now. If we can reach the manor, we have the secondary security system." "The manor is 2 miles through dense brush, Alexander. We'll never make it on foot before they catch us." "We aren't on foot," he said, looking at me. "Not anymore." He didn't explain. He just ran. And to my horror and a dark, surging thrill, I realized I could keep up. We weren't jogging. We were moving through the undergrowth like shadows. Branches that should have whipped my face were dodged with a twitch of my neck. Fallen logs were cleared in a single, effortless bound. I felt light, as if gravity had become a suggestion rather than a law. But as we ran, the woods began to change. And the Wolters estate had been in my family for generations, but I'd never seen it like this. The trees seemed to lean inward, their bark silvered by the moonlight. The shadows weren't black. They were a deep, pulsating violet. And the moon was no longer a celestial body. It was an eye, a massive silver eye that was watching our progress with a cold, judgmental hunger. "Alexander, stop!" I hissed, skidding to a halt near a massive, lightning-scarred elm. "We can't stop, Sasha. They're right behind us." "Look at the trees," I whispered, my voice trembling. They're moving." It wasn't the wind. The forest was shifting, the paths rearranging themselves like a living maze. The trail we had been following had vanished, replaced by a wall of thorns that looked like wrought iron. Alexander stopped, his chest heaving, and he closed his eyes, his head tilting back. He wasn't looking, he was sensing. It's the resonance. Osric's frequency. It didn't just trigger us, it triggered the land. "The land isn't biological, Alexander. It doesn't have DNA. Doesn't it?" He looked at me, and for a second, the gold in his eyes flickered, revealing a glimpse of the man I'd shared a dance with. "Your family didn't just build a house here, Sasha. They bled into this soil for 200 years. The Wolters' madness isn't just in your head, it's in the roots." A sharp snap of a branch echoed to our left. I spun around. Standing 10 feet away, illuminated by a shaft of that eerie silver moonlight, was one of the hounds. But he looked different now. The tactical vest was shredded, and his skin had taken on a gray, leathery texture. His silver eyes were wide. I fixed on my throat. He didn't lunge. He waited. "He's hurting us," I whispered. "I know," Alexander said. He stepped in front of me, his posture changing. He didn't look like a CEO defending a merger anymore. He looked like a wolf defending his territory. "They want us in the clearing. They want a show for the elders." "Then let's give them a different ending," I said. I reached down and picked up a heavy, jagged piece of the lightning-scarred elm. It was heavy, dense, and felt strangely warm in my hand. I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a Wolters, and Wolters don't get hurted. We moved toward the clearing, not because they forced us, but because it was the only place where we could see them coming. The clearing was a perfect circle of frost-covered grass, dominated by an ancient stone well in the center. At the mother well, my grandfather had called it. The moonlight here was so bright it felt like noon, but a noon from a different planet. Osric Volkovich was already there. He was sitting on a folding camp chair, a glass of dark liquid in his hand, looking for all the world like he was at a private polo match. Beside him stood the butcher, his black eyes fixed on Alexander. Around the perimeter, 5 hounds crouched, their breathing a rhythmic, collective hiss. "Welcome to the final board meeting," Osric said, his voice carrying perfectly across the clearing. "I hope you found the walk invigorating. The forest always has a way of stripping away the pretension of the city, doesn't it?" "You're insane, Osric," I shouted. "You've turned my home into a slaughterhouse." "I've turned it into a laboratory, Sasha, wherein you are my most successful specimens." Osric stood up, discarding the glass. He checked his watch. The silver thaw is almost complete. The atmospheric pressure, the lunar alignment, and the biological catalysts are all in place. Now, we just need to see which of you is truly the alpha. "I'm not fighting him, Osric," Alexander growled, his hand tightening on my shoulder. "Oh, you won't be fighting him," Osric chuckled, gesturing toward the butcher. "The butcher is merely the referee. You'll be fighting the forest. And each other." Osric pressed a button on a small remote in his pocket. From the mother well, a low tectonic hum began to rise. It wasn't the electronic frequency from the basement. It was a sound from the earth, a deep thrumming vibration that made the frost on the grass dance. The silver moonlight intensified, and becoming so bright it was blinding. I felt a sudden, sharp pain in my chest, right over my heart. It felt like a hook had been driven into my sternum and was pulling me toward the well. "Alexander!" I screamed, my knees buckling. Alexander was experiencing the same thing. He was doubled over, his hands clawing at the frozen grass. "It's the well. It's a conduit." "The mother well was built on a ley line, Sasha," Osric's voice boomed over the hum. "Your ancestors used it to ground the fever. Tonight we're going to use it to let the fever consume you." The air in the clearing began to shimmer. Mist, thick, silver, and smelling of ancient ozone, poured out of the well, crawling across the ground like a living thing. As it touched the hounds, they began to change, their bodies contorted, and their screams turning into true animalistic barks. They weren't turning into wolves. They were becoming something more primitive, more jagged. I felt the mist touch my feet. The fever in my blood didn't just boil. It exploded. I felt my perspective shift. The world wasn't a collection of objects anymore. It was a collection of scents and heat signatures. I could see the blood pumping through Osric's veins. I could hear the butcher's heart beating like a heavy drum. And I could feel Alexander. His presence in my mind was like a sun, bright, hot, and dangerously close. I could feel his hunger, his protectiveness, and his terror. "Sasha, don't let it in," his voice echoed in my head, but his lips weren't moving. "Fight the surge. If you let the well take you, you'll never come back." "I'm trying," I thought back, but the words feeling like shards of glass. One of the hounds lunged. It wasn't a tactical strike. It was a blur of teeth and claws. Alexander intercepted it in mid-air, the two of them crashing into the frost with a sound of breaking bone. Alexander didn't use a move from a martial arts class. He used his teeth. The violence was sudden, raw, and sickeningly satisfying to watch. A part of me, the part that had been suppressed by board meetings and spreadsheets, wanted to join him. I wanted to feel the resistance of skin, the heat of a kill. "That's it," Osric urged, his eyes wide with fanatical delight. "Embrace it, Alexander. Claim your territory." 2 more hounds moved toward me. They moved in sync, their silver eyes locked on mine. I didn't reach for a weapon. I didn't look for a way out. I looked at the hounds and felt a wave of absolute, cold dominance. "Back," I said. My voice wasn't my own. It was deep, resonant, and carried an authority that made the hounds flinch. They actually stopped. They looked at each other, their primitive brains struggling with the command. "I said back!" I roared. The surge of power that left my body was physical. The mist around me swirled into a vortex, and the 2 hounds were thrown backward as if hit by a tidal wave. They hit the tree line and didn't get up. I turned my gaze to Osric. He wasn't smiling anymore. He looked at me with a mixture of awe and genuine fear. You're controlling the resonance," he whispered. "That's impossible. Only a true alpha." "I'm a Wolters," I said, stepping toward him. Each step felt like I was crushing the earth. And this is my forest. The butcher stepped in my way. He didn't look impressed by my display. He raised a massive scarred hand and made a beckoning gesture. He didn't have the fever. He was just a machine of meat and bone. Alexander was back on his feet, his shirt gone, his body covered in the dark blood of the hound he'd just dismantled. He moved to stand beside me, his golden eyes burning with a light that rivaled the moon. "We take him together?" Alexander asked. "Together," I said. We moved as one. It was the most iconic moment of my life, not a dance in a ballroom, but a coordinated strike in a silver-lit clearing. Alexander went low, I went high. The butcher was fast, but we were the surge. We hit him with the force of a car crash. The butcher didn't go down, but he staggered. I felt my nails, now long and sharp as razors, sink into the leather of his vest. Alexander's shoulder slammed into the giant's ribs, the sound of cracking bone echoing through the clearing. The butcher roared, a sound of pure, unadulterated pain. He swung a massive fist, catching Alexander in the jaw and sending him spinning across the frost. I didn't think, I didn't plan, I leapt. I landed on the butcher's back, my arms wrapping around his thick neck. I felt the heat of his skin, the frantic pulse in his jugular. I could have ended it then. I could have been the monster Osric wanted me to be. "Sasha, no!" It wasn't Alexander's voice. It was the woman in white. She was standing at the edge of the well, her lantern held high. The silver mist didn't touch her. It seemed to bow away from her. "Do not let the blood dictate the end," she said, her voice cutting through the roar of the butcher and the hum of the well. "If you kill for the surge, you belong to the surge. Kill for the heart, or do not kill at all." My grip loosened. The butcher seized the opportunity, throwing me off his back. I hit the stone edge of the well, the impact knocking the wind out of me. The butcher turned, raising a massive fist to finish me. Alexander was there in an instant, tackling the giant away from the well. They rolled into the mist, a tangle of limbs and fury. I scrambled to my feet, my head spinning. I looked for the woman, but she was gone. Only the lantern remained, sitting on the edge of the well, its orange flame a defiant spark in the silver world. I looked at the well. The mist was thickening, turning into a solid wall of silver light. "Osric, stop it," I yelled. "You're going to destroy everything. I'm perfecting it," Osric screamed back. His face contorted with madness. He was standing near the well now, his hands outstretched as if trying to catch the light. "The silver Thaw is the birth of the new world. You are the first, Sasha, the first of the new pack." The hum reached a crescendo. The ground began to crack, deep fissures spreading out from the well like a spiderweb. Alexander and the butcher were still locked in their struggle, but the mist was starting to pull them toward the fissures. "Alexander, get away from the edge!" Alexander heard me, but the butcher wouldn't let go. He was a dead weight, a mountain of flesh determined to take Alexander down with him. The silver light from the well suddenly shot upward, a pillar of pure, cold energy that pierced the sky. The moon seemed to shatter, at the silver eye breaking into 1,000 shimmering shards that rained down upon the forest. And then, the sound stopped. The clearing was plunged into a terrifying, absolute silence. The mist froze in mid-air, turning into delicate, crystalline structures that looked like frozen smoke. The hounds were gone. Osric was gone. There was only Alexander and the butcher, frozen in their struggle at the edge of a massive, glowing fissure. And then, the fissure began to close. "Alexander!" I ran toward them, my hand outstretched. Alexander looked at me. His eyes were no longer gold. They were human, pale, terrified, and filled with an agonizing love. "Sasha, let go." "No." The butcher's black eyes flickered. He looked at the closing fissure, then at Alexander. He didn't smile. He didn't roar. And he simply let go of Alexander's throat and shoved him backward toward me. The butcher fell into the glowing crack, just as the earth snapped shut. The shockwave threw me and Alexander back into the grass. I felt a sudden, freezing cold wash over the clearing. The silver light vanished, replaced by the natural, dim glow of a pre-dawn sky. I scrambled to Alexander. He was unconscious, his body covered in deep gashes and bruises. He was breathing, but it was shallow and ragged. "Alexander, wake up, please, Alexander." I pulled him into my lap, my tears falling onto his scarred chest. The fever was gone. The surge was a memory. I was just a woman in a ruined emerald dress, holding a broken man in a silent forest. I looked around the clearing. It was empty. The stone well was just a well. The hounds were gone. Osric was nowhere to be seen. But as I looked toward the tree line, I saw it. The lantern. It was still lit, sitting on the stump of the lightning-scarred elm. Beside it sat a small leather-bound book. I stood up, my legs shaking, and walked toward it. I picked up the book. On the cover, embossed in fading gold leaf, was a single word: Vancourt. I opened the first page. There was a handwritten note in ink that looked like it had been written yesterday. The merger was always a setup, Sasha, but not by Alexander, and not by Osric. Your father didn't disappear. He went to find the cure, and he's coming back for the Alpha. Beneath the note was a map of the city, with a single red X marked over the Volkovich monolith, and a date. February 18th, 2026. Today. A shadow fell over the book. I looked up. Standing 10 feet away was my father. But he didn't look like a man who had been missing for months. He was dressed in a pristine white suit, his hair perfectly combed, but his eyes were a flat, dead black, exactly like the butcher's. "Hello, Sasha," he said, his voice a perfect, terrifying mimicry of the man I'd loved. "I hope you're ready for the second half of the merger. We have a lot to discuss before the moon sets." From the woods behind him, the sound of 1,000 whistling hounds erupted in unison.
Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for Episode 5, where Sasha must decide between the father who was returned and the man who almost died to save her, while the real truth behind the Wolters-Volkovich bloodline is revealed.